talking about drag shows, so I needed to finish that.
Let's keep politics out.
Jim had an important topic on his mind, and we need to get that out. So, all right, I guess it's time. We've got a quorum, so I'll call the July 26th Sandusky City Planning Commission meeting to order. We could call the roll, please.
Jake Castile, Jim Jackson,
Here.
Pete McGorry,
Here.
David Miller,
Here.
Steve Pajali,
Here.
Connor Whalen,
Here.
Mike Zuloff.
Here.
So it appears we have a quorum. Thank you. The first item on the agenda, as it always is after roll call, is approval of the minutes from the last meeting, which I guess is the June 28th, 2023 minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes, Mr. Chair.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any corrections, revisions? Hearing none. All in favor by vote or affirmation? All in favor, say yes or aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes have been approved. Next item under other business, it looks like this might be a quick meeting. One item, there is an application filed by Todd Hart on the behalf of Hody Marine Group for an application for a site plan approval for 2035 First Street to build a boat storage building in a current commercial zoning district. I would ask staff to explain that and educate us on that application.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The site in question is zoned CR Commercial Recreation. All zoning north, east, south, and west is also commercial recreation. The current use of this site is boat storage. The proposed use is stay-in boat storage. The surrounding uses of the site are both residential and commercial. The Hody Marine Group and the Venetia Marina property addressed in this application is approximately 3.521 acres. There are 4 buildings on this site, totaling 39,276 square feet. 3 of the 4 buildings are boat storage facilities, totaling around 36,000 square feet, and the 4th building is a pool house lounge area for guests, totaling approximately 3,200 square feet. The existing building coverage of the site is 21%. The new building coverage proposed increases it to 37.5%, which is 12.5% below the maximum allowable building coverage standard. The new storage building is going to absorb Building 2, which is currently a much smaller building, and then connect it to Building 1 here in the image on the right of your screen. The building will be 38 foot 7 inches tall and will be approximately 260 feet by 135 feet. The maximum height allowed in this district is 40 feet, which their proposal is below the maximum requirement. The property currently functions with a variety of marina uses, including boat storage. Currently, a majority of the site where the new building is to be placed has been used as outdoor rack boat storage. A change in the boat storage market, according to the applicants, has increased demand for the indoor boat storage facilities, which provide secure storage for patrons and also less maintenance to their boats. This project, according to the application, will create 3 new full-time jobs. There are no additional parking requirements. All parking requirements are met. They currently, based on staff analysis, have 308 parking spaces. 315, and they're required to have 308. So there's no landscaping requirements based on no new parking requirements. However, staff would ask that any trees be placed on the site where possible, and also have a low level of landscaping along the First Street facade of the building. The applicant is also working with local resources to provide a mural on the facade facing First Street to help beautify that facade, and this will add charm to people driving and walking by the site. The applicant is proposing to remove barbed wire that is currently along the property line of this site. Barbed wire can be viewed as an unwelcoming attribute to a site, and it's typically for heavy industrial uses. The removal of the barbed wire will go a long way at promoting curb appeal, and staff appreciates the applicant's approach to doing so. The proposed front yard setback along First Street is not allowed as proposed. The applicant is applying for a variance at the August 17th of 2023 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. Planning staff further has had a conversation with the applicant to address potential site plan that would improve visibility along the First Street corridor from the street perspective and able to see the water. A suggestion was added to add a garage door parallel to First Street. Currently, there's a garage door on the existing building, which would be building number 1. That opens up, and from the street perspective, you can see the water in the marina. Staff asked if that was going to be added to the new building, so there'd be an open doorway still from First Street to see through the marina. And the applicant's not interested in this approach and is moving forward as proposed. A boat storage facility is permitted, and a fence per the drawings is limited to 6 feet unless a variance is acquired. Based on other department comments, engineering had a few concerns, and that's to make sure that runoff from the proposed building will not be greater than the current impervious outdoor boat storage area, and also that Catalina Drive must not get new water from the new building's roof. According to engineering, it looks to slant in that direction. Based on all of this analysis, staff recommends the approval of the proposed site plan for 2035 First Street with the following conditions. Condition 1 is that all applicable permits are obtained through the building department, engineering department, division of planning, and any other applicable agency prior to any construction. Condition number 2 is that a front setback variance is obtained through the Board of Zoning Appeals prior to any construction. And condition number 3 is that parcel 57-02-641.000, parcel 57-02-640.000, and parcel number 57-02-639.000 are combined prior to any construction. Thank you.
I had one additional note in my my notes that the proposed fence, they want to take down the barbed wire, and they were proposing to put up a green chain link fence, and it is noted as 6 to 8 feet in height. 6 feet would be permitted in the zoning districts, but if they wanted anything higher than that, they would also need a variance for fence height.
Thank you, Mr. Blair.
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
As far as this, the engineering staff, are there anything, if the runoff is more detrimental to Catalina Drive, is there anything that they plan to do to correct that?
Through the chair to Mr. Jackson. So there is going to be a separate approval process that engineering will have for storm runoff. I think, in my personal opinion, the comments are more to get in front of these potential issues and to have it on the record. That being said, I haven't heard any further information from engineering.
Yeah, I would say I was taking that first statement to mean that the current proposed building is not going to create any new impervious surface because it's already impervious surface, and just stating that Catalina Drive must not get watershed from the new building's roof, and that would be included in the stormwater review during the permitting process.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Zullo.
I'm not clear what variances would be allowed, or would be required to execute this plan.
So it is going to be
Coverage, setback, what?
Sure. Through the chair to Mr. Zuloff. The variance required is for the front yard setback. In a commercial, any commercial district, the front yard setback requirement's 30 feet minimum. They're proposing 11, so they would need a front setback.
So 30 feet from
the front property
roughly
line.
where the sidewalk is, but from the right of way.
From the right of way, correct.
Correct. Okay. Now, is that the only variance? Is no fence? It would be a fence variance if it was 8 feet, right?
Correct.
So lot coverage isn't a problem.
Lot coverage is below. They're 12.5% under.
I'm slightly troubled by the idea that. Okay. So let's. Would this site or would this plan today conform to runoff requirements, and would it conform to landscaping? If this was a new plan, would this conform to the landscaping?
Yes, correct. It would, and that's because they are currently meeting their parking requirements. Now, what year that was approved, staff does not recall that information.
No, I'm not asking if the plan conformed to at the time. I'm asking if this plan conforms to the current landscaping requirements.
Yes, and once again, it's all down to parking standards. If they were to expand beyond their parking standards requirement, which they are currently not, they're below,
Okay.
It would then trigger more landscaping.
I'm a little troubled by the runoff issue. It's like, just because it's not any worse doesn't mean you should fix any you shouldn't fix any deficiencies because it's a substantially new plan. It's not, just because, and I don't know if it conformed to the codes at the time. I presume it did, but now you have a new plan, a substantial change. We're not talking about adding something little here. I don't understand the principle of well, it's not any worse. If this was a new plan and it conformed to runoff requirements, the stormwater management requirements, I'd understand that. But hey, it's not any worse. That's not what the law says. So I'm a little troubled by that answer.
Through the chair, if I may, the landscaping requirements in our parking code are not taken into consideration in our stormwater calculations.
No. I'm not even talking about
impervious service.
I'm not talking about parking or landscaping. I'm talking about the principle that the stormwater runoff isn't any worse because it's the same amount of impervious surface. This is something new. When you do something substantial to a site, you're expected to, at least to some degree, conform or get a variance to the current requirements. And I'm not hearing that this conforms to the current requirements. And we're adding a whole lot of roof here. It's kind of hard to believe that a roof is, isn't less permeable than an old, leaky, cracked concrete surface. So
I'm not reading the engineer's statement as saying that they don't need to take care of their runoff. Can we ask the applicants? I mean, is the plan to get a gutter and a downspout into?
Can I speak?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I don't.
Chair.
Well, I'm just.
Chair.
My name's Todd Hart.
State your name and address.
My name's Todd Hart with Hody Builders. This is 40 years of Hody Marine Group continuing to improve along First Street. From Venetian, which was our first property there, to Sunrise Marina, which was the old Bar Rubber, down to Bayfront Resort, Crossview Marine Services. So the concern that is being expressed, I do understand that concern. However, that's an engineering concern. So what's before you is a site plan, not engineered plans. Obviously, if approved, we still have to engineer that, including the drainage. That would have to go in front of the engineering department, and they would either approve or not approve that. So I do understand the concern, but that's an engineering concern, not a site plan concern. And we certainly would like to take care of our neighbors, not create a drainage problem with our neighbors there at Catalina Drive.
Well, it's not just neighbors. I think we're kind of going afield here because I was trying to get clarity on what the expectations from engineering and from the staff were. But since we're going here, and I don't want to get into debate and go back and forth and debate this yet, but I'm trying to understand, what standards we're going to be held to here. And the assertion that it's none of our business, it's an engineering problem is not true. We have to consider all the impacts when we do this. So yes, I am interested in what engineering has to say about it, and I am interested in what the runoff impacts are, and I even have to, I think, consider whether a variance is likely to be granted for this. So anyway, can you help me out here? Do we know, what, and I know there's engineering to be done, but will this be held to the current standards for runoff? We're not just talking about flooding the neighbors, we're talking about water quality here too. We're talking about potential extra loading or the opportunity to reduce loading on the storm drains, and that area is problematic anyway. It's pretty low lying, and that all has impacts on water quality. So that's what I'm probing here. What can staff tell me to clarify what requirements we're going to be held to, and maybe we need an answer from engineering. I don't know.
Through the chair, if I may, my understanding of the stormwater review process would be the first question is, is it creating more impervious surface? In this case, the answer would be no. The second question is, what is the grade change? Because the grade change would increase the speed of sheet flow of water, and that is what Josh would be reviewing on the pitch of the roof.
It's a
If it
pretty,
increases
pretty good
the
pitch,
sheet
right?
flow of the water, and to make sure they're going to catch that so it doesn't go into Catalina Drive or outside of their site, because our stormwater requirements require site owners to take care of their stormwater on their own site. They can't deflect it to another site. So that would be the engineer's review, and if they need additional basins to store that, or, to change the slope of the roof in order to change that would be taken care of at that time during the engineering review process.
Thank you, that's very helpful, because, obviously, you're going to not only probably have more net runoff and, less rainwater leaking into the, through the pavement, but it's going to come off a lot faster, right? So we have to consider that. We've been really, accommodating and permissive, adding storage buildings along First Street to the point where it's starting to look like a wall of steel. With zero setback, we've got another blank wall of steel. I'm sure it could be decorated or whatever. But this isn't the Truman Show where, we're trying to provide a real experience. I don't mind looking at boats along the waterfront, that's kind of normal, but a wall of steel, not so much. Now, it's zoned for that. I've got no problem conforming, to the requirements and permitting what's permitted. We don't have to invite a variance by approving a site plan that requires that you crowd the sidewalk instead of providing some setback.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect to Mr. Zuloff, I would move to approve the site plan as presented. And let the engineers do their job. I mean, we're not engineers. I don't want to second guess what they're going to say or what they're going to do, and that's the reason why we get comments from them. So I've got a comfort level that they'll cover these things. We can give them Mr. Zuloff's comments, and they'll cover it when the time comes. My only question to Mr. Hart is there's no mound with this?
There's no mound in the plan.
All right.
Nope.
Well, I'm satisfied by Ms. Blair's comment that the engineering will be handled. Okay, my strongest concern is the absence of setback. That you're going to be on the sidewalk and it's going to be this another wall of steel.
Motion, and I'd like to see if we can get a second, but I do have a question on the motion. You just said you'd like to make a motion to approve it. So is that implied subject to the conditions proposed by staff, which would be subject to all applications?
As presented.
As presented.
Mr. Chairman,
yeah.
I'll second understanding that, then we'll have discussion because I'm
Yeah.
ready.
And now I'd like to make a comment. I do think the runoff issue is a legitimate concern, and I'm no builder and I'm no engineer, but it would seem to me that some older asphalt and maybe some areas of gravel are more permeable than a brand-new roof, which is built not to let any water through. And if the water flows directly to the neighbor's, to the side of the neighbor's property, that's gonna have to be addressed. But as Mr. Bajali pointed out, that's really subject to the engineering and the applicant too. That's subject to the engineering. They'll figure it out. Now, whether that requires another catch basin, which I do believe is in front of one of these other buildings, and they can figure that out. As far as the setback, Mr. Zuloff, I do appreciate the concept or the concerns about setbacks, but I think the building to the right it would appear that this new building is proposed to match the setback for the existing building. So, but they still have to get a variance
Mr. McGorry,
That's not our
it is
decision.
actually back a little bit further. I think it's 3 or 4 feet further than the existing building there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how that existing building, if that was a variance that was granted previously when that was put up, but, and I do understand these are big steel walls. I think all these Hody buildings have been made to look as nice as they can be without looking like a little Cape Cod cottage. I mean, they're a big boat storage facility. I do like I don't know if they're artificial windows or whatever down the road.
We talked about that as an option as well.
Yeah.
I think also in our office, Kula had made contact with Shores and Islands about doing some murals or something on the front as well. And one thing, just from a practical standpoint, and I know we all like to drive by and look at the water, but if you drive by there, it's a boat storage yard.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing racks, you're seeing boats, you're seeing, some metal pieces.
You don't see much water.
You don't see much of the lake. So again, our concept is we're continuing to improve both the property and our operations there. And we'll make the front as attractive as possible.
Okay. Any other Mr. Miller?
Yeah, can't pass the chance to talk about runoff and stuff, water quality. I appreciate Mr. Zulaw's sensitivity. I felt like when I came to this meeting, I knew where it was going. There's always been some resistance to turning First Street into a canyon, like you're going through, but that ship has kind of sailed, so to speak. My sensitivity about the perviousness of the pavement or how to deal with it, yeah, I understand what Ms. Blair said. There's a requirement to the property owner to deal with their runoff on site. But it'd be very easy to let that runoff go to First Street, which already has a flooding problem from time to time. And to deal with that much sheet flow, if it goes straight into the marina, that's probably not the best solution for water quality. So I'm very interested to see what engineering will do with their standards for dealing with the sheet flow from that roof is not particularly a problem, but my roofer buddies tell me that when the water's coming out of my downspout and it's all soapy, it's because of all the stuff that settles on roof that is phosphorus that foams when water hits it. It becomes a soapy mess just from a roof that's just exposed to the atmosphere. And then if it's like running across asphalt or sheet flowing across asphalt to the marina, this might be an opportunity, maybe as Mr. Zuloff is suggesting or not, for interceptors that treat petrochemicals or the other pollutants that are naturally the product of that runoff. I'm all about it. If they can manage it on their site, fine, but letting it go to First Street or letting it go straight into the marina is probably not the best water quality solution we can come up with if we're engineering a new solution. That's my input for the engineer.
If I could, I'll just say, I'm not an engineer. We've worked with engineers through the years. The number one water quality coming off the roof is seagull poop. It would be the biggest issue coming off those roofs. But the engineers very simply can create not just catch basins, but swales that catch the sediments before it goes into an overflow structure to drain out. So I think, the concerns are valid concerns, but they're concerns that are easily engineered. I'm just not the engineer who does that. But obviously, we would need to engage an engineer to do that, and those plans would be submitted for approval to the city of Sandusky.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Zullo.
Okay, my point kind of got stepped on. You called your point of order and with the procedure on the motion, but it's clear that nobody understood, or not everybody caught my point. I'm not concerned about the runoff. I think that can be managed and engineered. I'm concerned about the setback and just increasing this wall of steel siding. it doesn't have to go on forever. And the point that, well, there's something already on the site, making it okay to go ahead and add to it, I can't agree with. So when I vote no, it's going to be because of my pointless opposition vote will be because of the setback. And looking at the lot coverage, I don't see why you can't arrange it differently and still have the setback and still have the exact same amount of parking available and the same usage of the lot. I can't see,
I could answer that question. if
okay,
you'd
well, it
like.
wasn't a question, it was, there's no rational, I don't see a defense for, crowding the street with more steel, other than being accommodating, so that's all I have to say about it.
Okay, go ahead and reply.
Just to answer that, if you look at the site plan, the alignment and the ability to come out of the new building, there is a door into the existing building up there on Front Street. So if we go all the way back, we don't have the ability to do that. So that is also a rack storage building. There's going to be doors. Those two doors are in alignment so that we can.
I don't understand what do you mean you don't have an authority?
The existing rack storage building there on the front east, the southeast, has doors on that building that face to the west. The new building will have doors in alignment with that so that we can store in the new building and go out of the new building into the old. And if we set back, as you say, back 30 feet, we will not have that ability. They will not line up.
Well, okay, so you're saying that this is the only reasonable solution you have to getting the square footage you need?
No, I'm saying that's why we have the building coming all the way up.
Well, if
Doors
you're
aligned.
allowed to do it, I don't blame you for doing it. I don't blame you for asking. I'm just saying it's this board and in the sense of our constituents is these buildings up against the street are not popular, and I'm just questioning the reasoning in allowing what we don't have to allow, just because it's better for one entity. And I'm not blaming you for asking to do it. I'm blaming, the system for just going ahead and saying, sure, why not? Well, the why not is answered.
Follow up on his question on that issue. So the existing building number 3, that's up against First Street, is that correct?
Correct.
And so there's a large parking area immediately to kind of the northeast or the behind that.
Correct.
If you were put this new boat storage building where that parking area is and leave more parking area right up against the street where you're proposing to put the new building. Again, I'm not necessarily being the one to say do that or propose it, but I'm just trying to follow up on Mr. Zulof's comment. Would that be a possibility?
This is the
Could you
new
end up
addition.
with the same amount of storage?
No, if you look at the application, this is actually an addition to building number 1. So the buildings are being built together. Same manufacturer, so it's an addition to building number 1. So to place that over behind building number 3, that wouldn't work. That also would kind of cut off that parking area and our ability to get to that parking area for our customers.
Okay. Well, I guess that's an answer, and I don't mean that with disrespect, but, so there's a motion on the table with a second. Any further questions of applicant, staff, or comments?
I would agree with Mr. Zulof's point that 30 feet back would be more appealing. But they do got to get a variance, correct? They got to go to the board zoning appeals to get a variance to do the setback. That is actually more their role than ours. I think your point, Mr. Zulof, is that we're encouraging them to approve that if we approve this, but I don't see them as being under any obligation to do so. I mean, the site plan can come back if they don't give the variance.
Well, approving the site plan is more or less an invitation to approve the variance.
I mean, I suppose, yes, in voting yes, we would be consenting that we are okay with that variance. But it's still kind of their call on whether that is there or not. I think that,
Mr.
I get your point in what you're trying to do. I just don't,
Well,
you got enough takers to force it here.
there are two hurdles here. One is the site plan. One scenario would be if we said, no, we're not approving this site plan because we don't like the setback. Then they got the variance. Now the law's changed. Now it's different than maybe, at that point, maybe we would be more compelled to approve the site plan if the variance was granted. But, we're communicating here too, and I just can't in good conscience communicate to the BZA that, hey, we think this is fine. It would.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr.
Much like letting the engineers do their job, I feel like that's why we have a Board of Zoning Appeals, so that they can hear this request. I wouldn't profess to be able to get into the minds of those people around the table and how they think or how they don't think, or what they think about us approving site plans. We do these kind of things all the time, and then it goes to them and they do their work. That's the way I see it. I mean, our job is yes or no, and I guess I would ask that we call for the vote.
So just to be clear, the motion and the second is conditioned not only on engineering approval, but also the site, or the variance application being granted. If the variance application is not granted, they have the ability to overrule what we just approved.
Sure. Am I right with that, Aaron?
That's not true at all.
If the variance isn't granted, then what's the next step?
If the variance is not granted for the building to be set at the site plan where it is, then they would need to come back for site
You
plan
need
approval
a
if
new
they're going to
site plan.
substantially change. the
If we
site-
say-
They would need a new site plan.
Yeah, to answer the question, what would happen is if we said no, BZA granted the variance, now it would be a new question, and they would be well within their right to resubmit the site plan if it was granted, because now the requirements are different. We've got standing to say no. If the variance is granted, now we have no good reason to say no because they have the variance. But right now, they don't have the variance.
Mr. Chairman, I guess go ahead, Ms. Blair. I don't mean to.
Through the chair, if I may, thank you. We go back and forth with applicants, whether going to BZA first or going to Planning Commission first. It's a better idea. In the case of the Bait House expansion, for example, it was a complicated case. They needed more than one variance. I do approach Planning Commission as a visionary body, as the stewards of the development of the city. And so we recommended them to come here first, which I think is and should be a signal to BZA, but to several points that are already made, the Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial body. It's a case-by-case basis. The case must be made. That's a unique circumstance that any applicant needs any variance for any particular purpose. So it is a different conversation. It'll be a more technical analysis. I did want to add that while our commercial district zoning points to a 30-foot setback, there is an indication, unless a setback is otherwise indicated on the zone map, there is a number 25 that is indicated to be a zoning setback on our zoning map that is adjacent to this parcel. It's not directly at this parcel. So their setback requirement may be 25 feet. I do not have a legal opinion on that at this time, but it's something that we are researching for the Board of Zoning Appeals case. If you look, and I've driven past this site multiple times, and I've given this a lot of thought because I kindly disagree with Mr. Hart. When we had this conversation, I would rather drive by and look at boats. I would rather drive by and look through a cut through of a building, even if it's just a tiny glimpse of the water. But we don't have any design guidelines that would necessitate that in our code. We cannot regulate that. We can, however, regulate the tidally site orientation of a site, and I think that having this building more in line with the one that's existing is going to be a more pleasant outcome than having one arbitrarily pushed back 25 feet.
Well, that's a matter of opinion, but you're kind of filibustering us here.
Analysis of this site, because I did take it into a strong consideration. If they set the building back 25 feet, there's nothing to stop them from planting arborvitae that would grow 25 feet to come up to the parcel line, which almost like 3 adjacent parcels have next to them. There's a fairly consistent condition along First Street, including the building that's existing. Further, if it's 25 feet, if you look at the van that's parked in a parking spot on this picture, top left, see that van? That's about 10 feet wide. That white van. If you picture that white van along their site, and 2 of them, that's 20 feet. So if you push this building back 25 feet, you're not going to be able to see the water, you're not going to be able to see into the site. It's not going to give any meaningful relief to the built environment along First Street, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate your opinion. And at no point did I say it needed to be 30 feet or even 25 feet, and even 10 feet would be an improvement. So I never said it's got to be 30 feet. I'm saying that up against, it crowds this side, the public right-of-way. That was my concern, and that's not going to change.
I was explaining why staff would also recommend to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variance for this.
I appreciate your comments, Ms.
Yeah,
Fuller.
thank you. I'm going to call the question.
Visibility.
Well,
Is it
typically that means you vote on suspending debate and calling it. But if you want to just, I'm ready to vote.
Is there any more
Okay.
comment?
All right, I got you.
I think it's been commented to the end, so does anybody have more comment? If nobody,
Right.
no more
Call the
comment,
question.
Let's vote.
okay. Call the question, please.
Jim Jackson,
Yes.
Mike Zuloff,
No.
Pete McGorry,
Yes.
Steve Pajali,
Yes.
Connor Whalen,
Yes.
David Miller.
Yes.
It appears that we have a majority vote to approve the motion. And I guess congratulations, go forward with the process, which would be all the approvals and the variance application.
That's it, right?
All right, thank you for your time.
I just thought I mentioned that I appreciate everything the company is doing and the improvements, the lakefront and all, the waterfront and all that. This is not lack of appreciation for the progress we've made along there. It's just not agreeing with running right away when it's not necessary.
Mike, we heard you nice and clear, and we appreciate your comments as well. So we appreciate your comments as well, and we'll consider everything you said.
Thank you so much. And congratulations and
Thank you.
All right, good luck.
good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Going back to the agenda, number 4, adjournment unless there's some other item of business to come before this meeting.
I have a few updates just on projects if you'd like
Please
to
do.
hear.
Please do.
The Sandusky Wheels Park, I've been given some iterative updates on there. So we've completed our engagement process, and we have the preliminary design concepts up on the webpage, which I pointed to you before. There's been some final tweaks made on those based on our last public meeting. We had a few highly frequent park users come, give us some specific feedbacks, and some changes have been made. And the next step is to start the construction documentation process. And so we hope that that'll just take a few months, and we'll be able to bid this out early next spring and build it so our users can enjoy it next spring and summer. On the Columbus Avenue process, we're nearing the completion of that design. So we have the 90% construction documentation and bidding documents currently under review, and we expect to seek City Commission authorization to bid that project in late 2023, and then it'll take a couple months to conduct the bidding, award the project in early 2024, and then target Labor Day 2024 for the beginning of the construction for Columbus Avenue streetscape. And then I also want to mention on July 10th, the City Commission approved a contract with Strand Associates to start our Churchwell and MacArthur Park project. So that's going to be led by Aaron Klein in our Public Works Department, but I'll also be strongly supporting that. So that's the first step in our South Side Plan implementation. They're going to take a look at the feasibility of all the infrastructure improvements that are needed in MacArthur Park, the water lines primarily, and sewer, stormwater, et cetera. And then it'll also include furthering the concept for Churchwell Park itself, for those park improvements. And that'll include another online survey and an in-person public meeting to come up with a preferred concept for Churchwell Park.
Thank you. I might add something that, and I don't even know if this is the appropriate body or that you're involved in it all, but something I mentioned to Mr. Bajali before the meeting started. And I'm in full favor of all the activity that's been going on downtown, including the Ironman that just took place on Sunday. But I happened to get stuck in the traffic about 2 o'clock trying to get from the Sandusky Yacht Club back out of the traffic, and it was just a madhouse. And so I know that that's a difficult situation, but the whole northeast quadrant of the downtown was funneled out of Meg Street, and it wasn't until like an hour into the process that I think a police car ended up on Meg's and First Street with their red light going, and then a policeman directing people, and then it's finally started to move, but it was unbelievably frustrating. So I don't know, I guess it's going to happen again next year. I don't know if the routes could be, maybe the running routes could be directed maybe north and south, like up Central Avenue all the way to Depot Street or some of those, rather than cross streets in the downtown, which seems to lock people down here, or alternatively get some police cars, if there's only going to be one egress in and out, put a policeman there so that he can let people out through red lights or something. But and it wasn't life or death. It's just, I'm just thinking maybe it could be thought through a little better, because it kind of blocked going to the west. My original thought was, instead of going where the traffic was not moving, to go west, but then I got dead-ended, trying to cross, and I had to turn back around. It was even worse than I was to begin with. So anyway, just a thought.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I happen to agree with some of your points there, and from someone who lives downtown.
Yeah.
On one hand, the map, you had to kind of study the map. If you studied the map, you knew what to do and how to get out. And I was able to basically come and go, and it was the people whose only means of driving in and out was on a street that was closed during the event. Those were the ones that were stuck. And if they planned ahead, they could move their cars elsewhere and walk to their cars. So I think they gave it a lot of thought. There were some details that were bad last year that were improved upon. It took some study of the map, so I helped my neighbors explaining. I had a map on my cell phone. Okay, here's where you go. Here's how you get out of here, because you could really get stuck.
How did you get out other than
Meg's.
Oh.
Meg's, and I knew not to attempt to leave when everybody else was.
Yeah.
So I didn't do that, and so the inconvenience was minor. It's not a noisy event. I like it. I enjoyed having it. But talk about getting out of our sandbox here. I mean, this is, come to BCA meeting and tell them.
Yeah.
We're kind of outside of our sandbox, but hey, if you get the soapbox, then get out of your sandbox.
Yeah. I just didn't know who has any control, so I'm just throwing it to everybody. But go ahead, Ms. Miller.
Well, now that we've been invited to the soapbox, I have my little pet concern on Columbus Avenue, where the sidewalk, the only walking way to get from north to south, is posted as illegal and has been for a long time, when I can understand the litigious society in which we live and the
What's illegal?
prospect of risk, the sidewalk under the subway on Columbus Avenue.
Oh,
On either end, it's like, says it's closed. Eventually, people do what people do, ignore the posted signage. And it's like, well, I guess I assume the risk and responsibility if I careen off that wall into the street because there's no guardrail or handrail or blocking. But why is it that the city couldn't put something even temporary there? If they can't finish it, put safety tape or something to say, use at your own risk or caution, rather than, my wife won't ride downtown anymore because there's no way to get there.
See what
Without
happens if you
going out-
Cross the street, can't you?
Say what?
You
No,
can't
they've
get
got
on the
that
other
blocked.
side. Is that blocked too?
Yeah, they've got their construction equipment
Oh,
there. They have
okay.
pipes and
Well,
equipment. and-
I think that the explanation we got at one of the commission meetings was they were waiting for that rail to come in, and it was a supply chain issue.
Right.
Perhaps you struck on a compromise, and I don't know, I defer to legal counsel. Could you like stick a clipboard up there with 100 waivers, and you just sign a waiver, and that, put it in a box if
Or
you get
put
to the other
caution
end?
tape or something to indicate that you're assuming
You won't
risk,
sue, yeah, you're
but
assuming
you're
all
not
the risk
breaking
from
the
walking.
law to walk uptown.
What, do you think you're going to be cited? They warned you, you know.
Right, that's the point. You're putting people in the position that they have to ignor the law, and I don't
Well,
like
the
that.
Can
people,
pass that comment on to Director Klein, who's
Yes.
managing the project.
It's a long drop if you're riding your bicycle and you miss.
I know, and walking, you can probably avoid that, but not legally.
See what happens when we cancel the BCC and then he's got a vent here.
I don't go to BCC to vent. I just vent here.
You know, about that fence, last time they built the fence, they built one of them facing the S, facing the pedestrians. And the other one was built facing the traffic with S.
Compromise, both
You
ways.
should have heard the outcry. You put it up backwards, you idiots. What? Like pedestrians don't count? Pedestrians got to read the S backwards and only cars have to read get to read the S correctly? You know, I think they're both backwards. I mean, the pedestrians are the ones moving slowly to read the S. The motorists should be looking at the road, not reading the S, right? So the correct S should be facing the pedestrians. Rant concluded.
Okay,
I don't have an answer for that.
okay. All right, anything else to be brought before this meeting before we adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Any second?
Second.
Second, Mr. Bajali, all in favor, say aye.
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 Let's get the hell out of here.
Still wondering.
What?